Good morning, everyone, for another riveting episode of Connect Your Audio. I am your host, as always, David Gregors. So glad to be here. It's just such a thrill and a pleasure to be able to talk about all of this that's going on in the world and to be able to more or less vent about it. I mean, how many people out there are just like, I am so sick of the news and all this stuff that's going on, and you just kind of want to go outside and scream. And so I feel you. I understand you. Maybe you should start a podcast. It's quite therapeutic, gets the wheels turning. And so just been a really pleasurable experience for me. As I said, I am your host. Happy to be here. 100% stunning, 100% brave. Doctors have tested this. They know it to be true. In fact, if you are literally shaking right now, just at the sound of hearing my voice, totally normal. No need to panic. No need to call an ambulance. You will just annoy them. This is a well-known side effect of being exposed to high levels of stunning and brave, is the literally shaking right now. It will subside, I promise. So, with that, let's get started. What are we talking about today? Well, I wanted to talk just a little bit today. Well, spend a good portion of the show talking about what will a Joe Biden presidency look like. It's really, even at this point in December, and these election challenges are going through. I mean, it's really hard for me to, I guess, accept that a Joe Biden presidency will happen. I mean, in a way, it's even harder to accept than a Donald Trump presidency. And the reason I say that is, with Donald Trump, he was a businessman, he was a celebrity. We all knew Donald Trump for 30, 40 years prior to his taking office. And so, thinking back to the 90s and all of the tabloid stuff, it's really hard to imagine that he would ever become president, particularly a very consequential president, a very successful president. So it was kind of hard to wrap my head around the idea that Donald Trump would be inaugurated on January 20th, 2016, or 2017, excuse me. It's even harder for me at this point imagining that Joe Biden will be inaugurated on January 20th, 2021. And the reason it's harder is actually the quite opposite reasons for Donald Trump. I mean, Joe Biden is, of all the people who've ever been in Washington as a career, Joe Biden is probably the least likely, in my mind, to ever actually become president. I know he's run for president a couple of times before. This was, I think, the third time. Back in 88, I believe, he was run out rather unceremoniously after it was discovered that he was a serial plagiarist. He had lied about law school, and he left in shame. In 2008, he ran up against Barack Obama. He knew he wasn't going to get it, but he'd been in Washington forever. And this is one of those Washington things that happens when you're in Washington for a long time and you just sort of run for president. It's not really clear what they're doing. They know they're not going to get it, but they just sort of do it. I don't know if it's a cash grab. Somebody should look into it. I just remember back in, I think it was 2004, Dick Gephardt, the old Democrat majority leader in the House, ran for president for like 20 minutes and really did nothing. So I don't know if it's like we're just going to have one last hurrah and ride off into the distance. Fred Thompson did the same thing. Rudy Giuliani did the same thing. They don't really ever put up any fight in these things. And so it's really unclear what they're doing. And so in 2008, that's where Joe Biden was. I mean, he was getting ready to ride off into the sunset and ran for president again, I guess just for the heck of it, probably a cash grab, like I say, and ended up being vice president to Barack Obama. And if you would believe the most recent election results, then you would see that he got millions upon millions of more votes than Barack Obama's landslide in 2008. And you can only conclude that Joe Biden was carrying Barack Obama that year, that he just excited people so much. and because he clearly excited people in 2020, despite the fact that he never left his basement. He made his he made his rally attendees stand in these stupid little circles and sit in their car and honk at him. Um, it was clearly an inspirational campaign, and you can understand how a record number of people would come out and vote for him, and you can understand how tens of millions, maybe 15, 20 million people, I forget the exact number, more voted more for him than they did for Barack Obama in 2008. So, but I'm still surprised because, as I said, Joe Biden is well documented to be a kind of a crooked guy. I mean, look at all the stuff that we found out about Hunter. If you missed that news, what I would suggest is do not go to Google. Go to DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo.com. That's a search engine. They will not censor the Hunter Biden stories. Go and look at the Hunter Biden stories, the Hunter Biden laptop, all of the stuff. You got to save 10% for the big guy. This is the kind of stuff that Joe Biden has done. He went from law school, essentially, never worked as far as I know. Maybe he had I don't know, maybe he was putting roofs up or something. Seems unlikely, but he went from law school straight to the United States Senate as a representative from Delaware in the Senate, one of their two senators. So he's been in Washington. He was in Washington since 1972, I believe. I mean, some ridiculous thing. He was in Washington when Richard Nixon was still president. In fact, he was in Washington before the Watergate thing. He was in Washington before Jimmy Carter. He was in Washington before Ronald Reagan. This is how long Joe Biden has been in Washington, and he somehow owns multiple multi-million-dollar properties. He collects classic cars. He's doing quite well financially, and it's not clear that the speaking fees are the only things that got him there. He's crooked. He's inept, as you can see. I mean, he's barely able to put sentences together now. But even going back earlier, before his strokes and all that, he was barely able to carry on a conversation without saying something that was racist. He's nasty. He came out of his basement a few times really to just sort of insult his voters, saying, "Hey, fat, look here, fat. You think I'm not healthy? Let's have a push-up contest." Or you're a lying dog-faced pony soldier, or if you want something else, then you better not vote for me. I mean, these are all strategies of clearly a landslide victory for a president, is to just go out and insult your voters and tell them to vote for somebody else. I mean, it just seems great. But we know Joe Biden. We know he lies. We know he cheats. We know he plagiarizes. You name it, Joe Biden does it. And suddenly on November 2nd, 80 million people supposedly vote for him, and he's no longer these things, I guess. Just the plagiarism thing alone. I mean, if you've ever gone to college and spent any time there, you know that plagiarism is a one-way ticket out. Like, you will be expelled if you plagiarize. And yet, Joe Biden was found to have plagiarized in law school. He was found to have plagiarized on the campaign trail. Heck, he was plagiarizing just like a week ago. I mean, with his whole quote-unquote Build Back Better campaign. Maybe it's not plagiarism. Maybe it's all about the Great Reset. I don't know. But this has been used. This Build Back Better is being used in Canada. It's being used in the UK. It's being used all over the place. And so, the guy hasn't changed, except for now he's interested in all of us coming together. So just really, really great stuff. And for what it's worth, the Democrats aren't all that thrilled about Joe Biden either. If you'll recall, Joe Biden's campaign was dead, and for good reason. I mean, as you know, he barely did anything. He didn't know where he was half the time. He was insulting his voters. And so Democrats saw that. But the problem that the Democrats had was they were apparently only really able to come together around Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders would have been absolutely slaughtered as the groundwork looked at that time. Now, Bernie may be one of the unluckiest politicians, perhaps, if that's what you want to call it, because I think Bernie's shtick would have actually played better post Corona. Um, I think there's a lot of people who would have been really into his message of universal health care and all that, despite how ill-advised that would have been. I think that would have worked in 2020. But at the end of 2019, people like Barack Obama, who was clearly the kingmaker here, waded into things and got Clyburn to endorse Biden in South Carolina and got everybody else to drop out. Clearly some backroom dealing happening. They put Kamala Harris on the ticket. A lot of people think she's actually going to be the president. So, you know, they're not all that happy with Biden either. I'm not so sure that Kamala is actually going to be the president, because I'm not so sure that Joe Biden is as mentally deficient as we think he is. I think he does have some deficits, but I don't think he is as bad off as we think he is. And I don't think that he is going to sit back and allow Kamala Harris to run over him if he can help it at all. I think this is something he's wanted to do since he got to Washington, and he may be 80 and he may forget where he is some of the time, but he remembers where he is a lot of the time. He got through 2 very rigorous debates, and he's got a very compliant media that's going to allow him to sit in the basement for days and ask him questions like what color socks he has on and what does it feel like to be healing America. They're going to be very easy on him. So it doesn't make sense to think that Joe Biden isn't going to exert the most control here, because that they're going to have to figure out a different way to control him, because he does have some things going for him. So I want to give you a few examples of the Democrats not being all that excited. I just looked at an article from the Washington Post that says, from Dan Balls, who says, there's urgent problems facing Biden and he can't afford the early missteps. That's missteps happen with every president, and Biden will be no different should he get up there. But this is not a rosy picture. So he goes back and talks about Ron Klain being appointed to the chief of staff, and that probably was a good pick for Biden. He needed somebody who was an old Washington type, but he's filled his entire cabinet with old Washington types so far. So definitely the swamp has been refilled, or will be refilled. But you have just this dichotomy of what we, the Trump supporters, believe America looks like right now, and we think it was on the right track until Corona. We think it was on the right track until we started having racial violence and protests going on. And so the Democrats have seized on it, and the last 4 years have left America in a different place. You can't go back to 2016. So Joe Biden and Kamala Harris face a steeper and more challenging road ahead, and this team is going to need every ounce of connection and coordination to help them pull together to get America out of this mess. This is from Chris Coons, who is famous for allowing Joe Biden to fondle his minor child daughter in public. This is part and parcel of the different sphere, the different world that these people live in. I'm actually working on a book right now, and I'm calling these kind of people denialists versus realists. And the denialists can't see outside of their little ideological bubble. And so we see this just all through. And I think this is the real danger of a Joe Biden presidency, is their view of the country right now is quite frankly frightening, and demands, actually, if all of their views were true, their view would demand radical, remedies. And so it behooves us to pay attention to what these people are saying. And so you have another Washington insider here saying, we need to have somebody come in and be Secretary of State to pick people in those positions who know the positions. You want to have a mechanic who's worked on a car, not one who's never worked on a car. I mean, they're justifying refilling the swamp. So they're already. I think they feel good with some of the picks that Joe Biden has brought in. I think they feel good about it. I think they feel good in the direction that it's going. So, but again, we just need to be aware, if we're going to be a quote unquote resistance now to a Biden presidency, we need to be ready and willing to understand that they see the country in a very, very different way than we do. Here's another quote. The results in the House and the Senate elections, this is from Chris Coons, the results in the House and Senate elections make it clear that while a majority of Americans are sick of Trump and Trumpism in the White House and voted for more normalcy and measured leadership with Joe Biden, they are not fully sold on the agenda that the Democratic Party is presenting. We need to find better ways to demonstrate that we will actually deliver results that will make people's lives better. Well, you had 8 years of Barack Obama. We got Donald Trump because of 8 years of Barack Obama. Because of people like Chris Coons sitting up there doing nothing, making things worse for the American people. That's how we ended up with President Trump. And I don't believe that the results in the House and Senate make it clear that the majority of Americans are sick of Trumpism. I don't even, first of all, don't really know what Trumpism is, but we'll get into that. But secondly, at least he's being somewhat realistic and the understanding that the Americans are not sold on his agenda. No, we're not sold on it. All you've ever told anybody is we're going to spend trillions of dollars and not be Donald Trump. That's it. It's like the mask mandate thing. Oh, I'm going to mandate masks. And then somebody pulls on Biden's coat and says, yeah, you can't do that. Well, yeah, you're probably right. Probably can't do that. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk to every mayor, every governor, every city councilman, and I'm going to beg them to institute a mask mandate. Yeah, so look out, Lizella, Georgia. He's calling for you, Mayor of Lizella. Look out, guys. We're going to have to put that mask mandate in because Uncle Joe says we got to. It's just ridiculous. He's got no plans. His only plan for coronavirus is to do the thing Trump has already been doing, and he's going to ride the coattails of Trump's vaccine. Operation Warp Speed was a magnificent success. How did that happen? Cutting down regulations and pushing through, allowing these companies to do what they do and urging them and enabling them to do what they do very quickly. And Biden is going to reap the benefits of that. But it's not going to stop him from instituting some just truly disastrous policies on the way down. So just moving on, we see that the Black Lives Matter movement finds itself at a crossroads as Biden prepares to take office. Well, yeah, I can see that. There's a lot of really good reasons for Black Americans to be very, very suspicious of Joe Biden. I mean, for instance, he's on record in his very early days speaking in glowing terms about his segregationist colleagues. He's made some very racist comments on the record. Saying you had to have an Indian accent to go to a 7-Eleven, and he wanted Romney wanted to put black people back in chains. I mean, he's had some troubles. He led the charge against Clarence Thomas, who at the time was the second African American to be nominated and installed on the Supreme Court. He ran after him with all of these what Thomas actually described as a high-tech lynching. He wrote the 1994 crime bill, which was responsible for imprisoning millions upon millions of African Americans. So they've got some problems. They do have some problems. And so this article focuses on John Sloan III. He's part of the Black Lives Matter movement, apparently, in Detroit. And he says, Joe Biden was not my first choice. He was not my second choice. He was not my third choice. But I'm also a pragmatic individual, and I think Joe Biden is going to be better than the Trump administration for me. And so he goes on to list a lot of the things I just listed, including the 1994 crime bill. But he got a lot of points for pandering. Biden did pandering to the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's interesting that he asserted in a fall campaign ad that Black Lives Matter, period, and this is a Washington Post article, and the Black Lives Matter is black is capitalized, lives and matter are not. And so when someone comes to you and says, say that Black Lives Matter, the reason that is such a trap and such a hard thing for people to do is that it comes across as you're trying to endorse this organization that truly stands for a lot of things that average ordinary Americans find quite offensive, such as the organization stands for the destruction of the family unit. They stand for complete and total socialism, probably communism, but their ideas are at least painted in rosy socialist terms. So I don't know anybody, and I've never known anybody living in the South my entire life who have not believed that Black Lives Matter. And if you say, do Black Lives Matter? Sure, yeah, Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, everybody matters. For some reason, though, this became a really hot button issue, and they used it against Trump because he didn't say Black Lives Matter directly in that term. I mean, could we perhaps say something else? Black lives have value. Black lives have intrinsic value that is equal to that of their white counterparts. I mean, is there some kind of... nobody denies that Black Lives Matter, and yet people go around demanding that you answer that in that way. And so most people, quite understandably, were suspicious of that tactic. But going on about Black Lives Matter, their suspicions about Joe Biden, Patrisse Cullors, founder of the movement, says that she wants their agenda to be heard and to be prioritized. We issue these expectations not just because black people are the most consistent and reliable voters for the Democrats, but also because black people are truly living in a crisis in a nation that was built on our subjugation. So I'm not even going to get to the merits of that claim because I think it's obvious why that's a problem. I mean, to say that all black people are this or all black people are that is kind of the complete opposite of the way I was raised. And quite frankly, the opposite of what I thought they wanted. But I mean, clearly this is, that's not true. And so they go to, they go on through this article just a little bit and just sort of, they're talking about the Breathe Act. That was a federal policy that they hope will come in and be brought in for congressional action. The proposal calls for divesting federal resources, defund the police, defunding incarceration, greatly expanding the funding for low-income schools, creating UBI, Universal Basic Income for poor Americans, overhauling drug laws. This is a big ask. I mean, this is truly this is ambitious. Though many of the proposals are unlikely to be supported by Republicans, They said that activists believe that Biden can signal his support for the movement's goals through budget and spending decisions, including steering more funding to predominantly minority communities as a part of any new coronavirus stimulus package. So, what what you have here, and again, this goes back to why Trump didn't want to say Black Lives Matter, because he doesn't want to endorse universal income. Okay, universal basic income. That's not part of his thing, and it's a loaded syntax. It's too much meaning built into one little thing when I can just as easily say, yes, black people matter to me. Black people should matter to the community. I will not, however, embrace this radical agenda of universal basic income and defunding the police and so on and so forth. All of that is insanity, and I don't support it. So trouble ahead on the racial side. I mean, will they be placated? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, or because that truthfully, the Democrats have been doing this to black people since the 1960s, promising them the moon and not actually delivering on it. And by the way, Biden was there for like 90% of it. Biden was 90% probably at fault for not delivering on those promises. And yet, here it is in 2020, and they think he's going to change things. So, moving on, you have the big question of the Democrat governor in California is ignoring, Gavin Newsom is ignoring the Supreme Court and is, according to Breitbart, doubling down on the worship restrictions. Is Joe Biden going to listen to the Supreme Court? Is Joe Biden going to call Gavin Newsom and ask him why is he attacking our most sacred institutions? Is he? I don't think so. I don't think so. So Joe Biden, we have to look at these things as an indicator of what's going to happen. Does Joe Biden have the spine to stand up to Gavin Newsom? Does Joe Biden have the spine to be said he wants to kill people's grandmothers and he's got blood on people's hands? Because the media said that about Trump, and I can only assume, of course I'm being highly sarcastic here, but I can only assume the media is going to be just as tough on Joe Biden as they were on. I can't say it with a straight face. Yeah, I can't say it with a straight face. So just scratch that. He's going to do what he wants. In other words, this COVID thing is the Supreme Court. You know, they gave us a win, but we do have to have officials who uphold those laws and uphold those rulings. But that brings me to the most interesting thing about Joe Biden, and that is a Rasmussen poll that came out, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, November 19th, and it said that 47% say it's likely that Democrats stole votes or destroyed pro-Trump ballots in several states to ensure that Joe Biden would win. And I know this has been talked about a lot. I haven't heard anybody else's thing, but this is huge, so it has to be talked about. So when I ask what does Joe Biden's America look like, if you have 47% of the people saying that he stole that election and he's not a legitimate president, it's going to be difficult for Joe Biden to get any sort of consensus going. Truly. It's going to be difficult. I think it will be nearly impossible for Joe Biden to govern that way. We're not talking about mere disapproval here. We're not talking about the daily approval tracking polls. We're talking about 47% of people who say he stole it. That is massive. That is massive. And so if it tells me anything, the only mandate that exists is for universal voter ID and voter protections to make sure that our elections will be safe and secure and unable to be tampered with. I don't have a remedy for this. I mean, perhaps we need to get rid of the anonymous balloting. Who knows? But what I do know is that Joe Biden, with 47% of the country saying he stole the vote, is in a really, really weak position. Joe Biden, having lost many, many seats. I mean, if it weren't for the fact that the Democrats had a huge majority in the House already, then the Republicans would have flipped the House and would have had themselves a huge majority. but they've a significantly weakened majority in the House, at least 50-50 in the Senate, probably of the two Georgia races. Hopefully, at least one of them will go Republican. Um, Talk more about that in the next segment. But Joe Biden is going to have a really, really difficult time governing. I will say this about one thing, though. There's been some talk about what should we do about student loans. Now, look, I am a Republican. I used to be a liberal. I am a Republican. But I recognize that the Republican Party has a really difficult time doing something other than saying no. In other words, when a problem is presented, the Republican Party has a very difficult time coming up with some sort of solution for it. And I mean that with all the love in my heart. But it seems to me, just looking back, the last like serious policy proposal I remember coming out of a Republican that wasn't something to do with tax cuts was No Child Left Behind. That was the last thing I can remember that came out of a Republican campaign and contained ideas, contained reforms that were aimed at improving some sort of problem. Since then, largely due to the fact that we had 8 years of Obama in the middle of there, uh, since then we've just been playing defense and we've gotten quite good at it. But there's an issue here with the student loans, and I wanted to talk about this just a little bit because I'm actually fairly sympathetic to the calls to forgive student loan debt. And this is actually the populist in me because I see student loan debt the same way I see payday lenders. In other words, let me just tell you a little bit about my experience. When I first set foot on a college campus, this was all the way back in 1999, I I got a little music scholarship. I realized that wasn't going to cover what I wanted it to cover, so I go to the financial aid office, and it became clear that I was going to need to take out a federally backed student loan. And the people in the office were actively urging me not to do that. This is the results of that. You have to go. It's going to be on your credit. Uh, you shouldn't go into debt for a school. Is there some way somebody can help you pay all of this? And it just wasn't. So I ended up having to take out a student loan anyway. But the point is, it was very hard. Now, I took some time off, went and did the paramedic thing for a while, and decided in 2011 I was ready to restart my education and finish it up. So I get in 2011, and I say, hey, I'll take out a student loan. That's fine. And it was like, sure. How much do you need? How much do you need? Whatever you need, let me give it to you. And so, you know, obviously you're going to take out the maximum, but obviously the school is going to make sure that the maximum amount is covered. And when the government says we'll lend this much money, the college has no incentive to lend to set their prices lower than the maximum lending amount. So, and it was that way from 2011 all the way until I finished law school in 2015. So, obviously racked up a lot of student loan debt. I am paying my student loan debt. I'm a public service lawyer. So within a 10-year span, I've got a few more years left on that. The loans will be forgiven anyway, just because I've dedicated 10 years of my life to public service. So it's fine for me. It's not a selfish motivation, but what I do see is the predatory type lending that has been going on in student loans. Now, back in '99, again, they made the student loans harder, but what they also did was when I went and checked my mailbox for the first time, the thing was literally full of credit card offers. So college students are treated across the board in academia, or I guess in the financial world, as just open checkbooks ready to go. And something needs to be done about that. So I'm willing to entertain the student loan debt cancellation. Um, I don't have I again don't see a solution from the Republicans. Here's my solution. I'll make a deal with Biden. I will go along because I'm very powerful, as you know. I will go along with student loan cancellation, but here's what I want to see. I want to see student loan reform. I want to see student loans given on the basis of majors. In other words, if you major in 14th century fine art, um, you can appeal the decision, but no, you're not going to get a student loan. You can tell us, boy, you've got a really good job lined up, but no. I mean, any of these majors that are feeding the university system with more faculty members probably shouldn't be getting student loans, because faculty members of the university serve a very discrete purpose, and it's just to make the college money. They're not really doing anything with their degrees. So nothing but love for the people who do that, but I think that the certain majors are going to have to demonstrate their utility in order to get these easy loans. I'd also like to see audits of every school campus. Where are they spending money? Where can they cut? Because we got to get tuition down. We need to do something to make it to where, because tuition is just going up and up and up. And if you've been to a college recently, I want you to take notice of the new buildings. I want you to take notice of the marble columns and so forth, as I saw it the last time I was at my alma mater. I want you to take notice of the fact that they are buying up properties in that town at a record rate. So, do they need to be raising tuition every single time? No. No, of course they don't. Of course they don't. So I'd like an audit, because I'd like some of this money to come out of these universities, and whatever cuts that they get, they can take it out of their foundations. Period. And finally, here's the part of the student loan discussion that kills Republicans every single time. And this is the populist message. When Bernie Sanders or AOC or whoever else says we need to forgive student loans, and the Republican response is we can't afford it, their response is we can afford to send troops overseas to die, but we can't afford to pay money at home. And that is a very, very powerful argument to which I have heard no legitimate response. If you can think of one, let me know. Send me an email. I don't know. But I can't justify. We've spent over 18 years of war as of when these statistics were gathered. This was 2019, and so the war in Afghanistan had been going on at that time for 18 years, at an estimated cost of $2 trillion. 2,400 American soldiers dead, and 38,000 Afghan civilians also dead. We've improved marginally some of the stuff in their country, but can you tell me why on earth we're still there? And Donald Trump is wanting to pull people out, and of course the swamp, the military-industrial complex, all these people, they don't want to do that. But I'm just saying, just as a thought exercise, what if we pull everybody out of there, and for the next 18 years put the money that we would have spent in Afghanistan into a debt refilling, a payoff account, I guess you could say. Forgive the loans now. Start sending the money from the Afghan war into paying off that 1.6 trillion is what it comes to amount of debt. What if we did that? Just Afghanistan, 18 years of just Afghanistan would pay that. But then we also, again, here's another part of my offer. Bring these troops home, But let's also take a look at some of these pork barrel projects that go out, these grants that go out to study, cocaine's effects on quails. This is a real thing. There was a study that was funded with taxpayer money. Are there agencies that we don't need anymore, like the Rural Electric Agency? I saw a mention of that yesterday. I'm not sure if it still exists. It did in the 90s when the article I read was talking about it. Do we need them? Are there places that we can trim? And I think the answer is yes. To pay the 1.6 trillion, I think the answer is largely in Afghanistan, and I think it's in other foreign entanglements as well. And by the way, Trump gets great credit for cutting, or not really cutting, but for forcing the NATO allies to pony up for their part. Let's take some of that spending. But at the time of this article, about what did the U.S. get for $2 trillion in Afghanistan. The Taliban is gaining strength. Opium production has quadrupled. Bin Laden has been dead for quite some time, and Afghans still live in poverty. The thing is still a third world country, and we are just pumping money in so they can keep blowing it up. Whereas we could stop doing that and rebuild our own country. We could do infrastructure if you want, but I think that after a year of coronavirus, when our economy has just had the living crap kicked out of it, and is only standing because of the strength that it had coming into 2020, I think that a wiping out of the student loan debt would give us a needed boost, and a couple of reasons. First, there's the monthly payments. But also, there's something that people don't understand about student loans, is that many people with student loans can't buy a house even though their income would allow them to. And the reason is there's this little tiny loophole. So when you accrue a lot of student loan debt, you get this monthly payment, and sometimes these monthly payments can be like $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, and so of course, when you're talking about credit ratings and debt to income ratios, that $2,000 payment that you're supposed to be making on your student loan counts quite heavily against you. However, very few people actually pay that $2,000. They do an income-based repayment, and to which their payment is limited to some certain percentage of their disposable income, rather than just being a flat payment. And they get on these forgiveness tracks because you have the 10-year forgiveness track. And I want to say that at 20 years, maybe you get forgiven just anyway. But still, with the debt to income ratio, they don't calculate it based on your actual payment. They calculate it based on what your payment is going to be. In other words, or what your payment is supposed to be, or what it would take to pay off the loan within a certain amount of time. This just completely nukes some people from ever being able to buy a home. So I'm just sitting here thinking, well, if we fixed the student loans, all the way around so that we don't get in this trouble again, and that we help the ones who did get into trouble, if we fix them, this would not only free up a lot of money for spending every single month, but it would also put a lot of people in the housing market, which is always good. So I make that deal with Joe Biden. I do this as a populist, not as a Republican. And Republicans, Ted Cruz, where you at? Rand Paul, you've been presented with a problem. Student loans are a problem for millions of Americans. Come up with an idea. Don't just say no. So in this case, I'm open to some negotiation. I await your offers. All right, so I went way over talking about Joe Biden, but it's good. I think we had a good conversation. For the quick take segment today, I'd like to talk a little bit about martial law. Now, Lynn Wood came out yesterday with a tweet. I guess he was retweeting somebody else who was calling for martial law, and Lynn Wood said, heck yeah, let's do martial law. Yeah, because we need to have a new election. Sorry, I was just trying to pull up pull up the article. I've actually written an article. Hopefully it will be on WorldNet Daily today. But Linwood's exact words are, our country is headed for civil war, a war created by third-party bad actors for their benefit, not for we the people. Communist China is leading the nefarious efforts to take away our freedom. Donald Trump should declare martial law. And the idea, he's retweeting this We the People organization who cited actions done by President Lincoln back in the 1860s to declare some limited martial law. And it's not really worth exploring all that deeply. I did want to tell you that I wrote this article. Hopefully it'll be on WorldNet Daily. But I, in a world of unhelpful tweets that have been coming out of the Republicans for the last month, in a world of unhelpful ideas that have been coming out about this election, this may be the worst possible idea. Because here's the thing, it's not like we haven't just spent the last 4 years fighting off these ridiculous accusations that Donald Trump is literally Hitler. So what's your answer to that? Well, let's make him literally Hitler, I guess. Let's just make him set up martial law and just declare a brand new election. There is no legal precedent for that, okay? What there is a very strict process within the Constitution, built-in protections. You have the Electoral College, you have the state legislatures who are responsible for certifying, for making sure that the electors are good to go. You have Congress's role in counting the vote. You have also, besides all of that, you have a judicial system in which several months before, or a couple of months before inauguration, during which legal challenges can be pursued. We have remedies for this. If you do anything in the law, the one thing you will know across the board, I don't care if you're talking about torts, I don't care if you're talking about criminal law, and I don't care if you're talking about constitutional law, the one common thread in the law is that the law is supreme. We are a nation of laws, and we have a route to deal with what is going on. If Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis are able to make the cases in these states, great. We have to trust the process. What I'm not going to do is sit here on the sidelines and say, if I don't get my way while we're going through that process, Donald Trump should declare martial law. It's an absolute ridiculous idea. It is ridiculous. It's laughable. But we have a Twitter poll. Very, very scientific, I understand. But a user at Legendary Energy with 20 hours remaining, 3,673 people had voted on the question of whether people agreed with Linwood's suggestion that Donald Trump declare martial law. 50.9% said, yeah, do it, while 30.1% said, no, don't do it, and another 18.9% had just woken up, apparently, or had been just plugged into the Matrix. Who knows? They didn't know what time it is. They had no opinion. So I comment on there. I vote. I say, no, don't do it. I'm one of the 30.1%. And I comment on there. I can't imagine a more unhelpful suggestion. And I just get comment after comment saying, what are we supposed to do? We can't just let them do this. We can't just... Again, I get the frustration. I understand, and I believe it too. I believe that lawlessness happened in this election. I believe that we should not tolerate any lawlessness in any election, ever. But answering lawlessness with lawlessness is not the answer. That's not an acceptable solution. We have processes. Giuliani is going down. Ellis is going down. Linwood is also supposed to be going down. He's working, I guess, on behalf of the campaign, but not really at the behest of the campaign. He's trying some of these things in court. He knows this. He's a lawyer. He knows there's a legal process, and if he can show me somewhere where declaring martial law because you lose an election due to fraud or not fraud is if he can show me somewhere where that is anything but a banana republic dictator type move, I'll entertain it. But again, this is and I know I'm going to get hatred on this. I know This is a hot button topic. Yes, I am not a weak person. I am not one of the Republicans you're going to need to flush out. If you want to, fine, whatever. I don't care. But we are a nation of laws. This is where I draw the line. Really, I will entertain any election challenge that anybody wants to put forward. But at the end of the day, when everything is done, we have to follow the Constitution and we have to follow the laws of the land. Just because somebody else doesn't follow the rules doesn't mean we don't have to. That's what I have to say about that. Finally, we have Today in Culture. And Today in Culture, I want to talk about this article that I saw in Breitbart. And they're referring to this, I guess it's already in your technology. So if you own anything that's Amazon, like a Ring doorbell or a Nest thermostat or any Alexa, any of those things that are part of what they call the Internet of Things, I think is what it's called. Anyway, all of these smart gadgets, but it's particularly the Amazon ones. Apparently, they all had this mode within them, and they've just now decided to tell everybody it's there, called Sidewalk, Amazon Sidewalk. And so what this does, Breitbart refers to it as the hive mind. What this does is if you have, say, an Alexa garage door opener, and sometimes maybe your phone doesn't quite reach it from the end of the block, your garage door opener will link up to Amazon devices to each of your neighbors so that it can pick up your signal from farther away. It sounds kind of cool, but at the same time, your device is sharing a network that is not yours. It's taking up bandwidth on a network. So it's unclear as to whether, say, your neighbor over here is a high-level hacker. Well, let's make him a beginning hacker, and he's just taking down all of his firewalls and everything, and he's getting attacked, right? Does that mean they can attack your device? Presumably, if your device is riding on their network, presumably there is an opening to your device and it can be attacked. I don't know if there's like a valve to prevent the backflow into your network, but I mean, it's definitely opening your network to other things. And look, I like technology as much as anybody else. I have a house full of Apple products, but this, I think, is a bridge too far. First of all, Amazon has already been proven multiple times of being listening to your conversations. Actual people listening to if you're drinking, having fun, talking about aliens, whatever you're doing, Amazon people have been proven to be listening to your conversations. Sorry to tell you, if you're in the back room with your significant other, Amazon employees are listening to you too. So the only thing that I have in my home, as far as I know, that has an Alexa hookup is my thermostat. It's not a Nest, it's something else. But I actually have the Alexa disabled on that. And I highly recommend, CNET does, Gizmodo does, I highly recommend that you shut this feature off. There's instructions on there. Again, it's Amazon Sidewalk. I love my technology. I love the technology advancements. I love the idea that I can speak to millions of people from my little office on my computer and not have any special equipment or anything. It's just great. It's an amazing time that we live in. I can dial up the questions right now, answers to the questions that have been burning in my head for years, all at the fingertips. And it's a truly amazing time that we live in. But guys, you guys have got to cool it, man. There's not a reason in the world. So what? My garage door opener doesn't work a mile away. I don't. My regular, even if it wasn't a smart garage door opener, it wouldn't work that far away. So why do I need it to work a mile away? Why do I need my door to unlock when I'm a mile away? It doesn't even seem like really the there's a really good reason for this. In fact, in the Breitbart article, they asked Amazon, like, hey, what's the deal? What's the purpose of this beyond just extend? I mean, the extending of the range really doesn't seem like a great feature. So what's the deal? And they're just, well, it's just going to help all the devices work better. Guys, this is insufficient. I mean, there's no, I don't need my refrigerator linking up to my neighbor's blender just because they're both Alexa. I mean, I'm kind of divided on whether I even need an Alexa refrigerator anyway. I don't have one, and do I need my refrigerator telling me I'm out of eggs? No, I don't. So I would encourage people. I mean, we all need a basic amount of technology if we're going to function in society. Our functionality will go down in society the less technology we participate in, and I'm fine with that. As of right now, I need a computer, right? As of right now, I need a phone. As of right now, I kind of need an iPad. But that's about it. I don't need much more than that. I like my thermostat that changes with the time and all that. I can tell when I'm home and all that. That's convenient. It's nice. It actually has helped with the light bill. But it doesn't need to know where I am in the world. It truly doesn't. I mean, as long as it can tell that I'm in the house and change the temperature itself, that's fine. I don't need it to start cooling down when I'm 3 miles away. And by the way, there's presumably no limit to this, because if you think of a chain, I mean, in my particular neighborhood, it would eventually run out, not be able to connect to other things. But if you live in a city, it's reasonable to believe that there's possibly nowhere in the city that you could go where your blender won't know where you are. And I don't feel like I have that relationship with my blender. It's a little clingy for me. So I just chill with this stuff, guys. I don't know what you're going for with this, but it's not good. And I don't want you to have this much power. And I know that there are plenty of people who would agree with me on that. Maybe somebody out there likes their refrigerator telling them that they're out of eggnog. I just know your place, refrigerator. You're just there to make things cool. You're not there to tell me what to do. I mean, at some point, I'm assuming maybe it already is. The refrigerator can order your eggnog through Instacart. Maybe, I don't know. It's just too much. It's too much. So, with that, I want to thank you all for listening and for tuning in. This is, again, I'm just enjoying the heck out of this. I hope I'm getting better every day. I'm working a little bit more with prep time and everything, and trying to improve as time goes on. I would encourage you to like and share and subscribe to this podcast. We'll do what you do. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your people at church. If you don't like what you hear, you don't have to do any of that. It's fine. I still love you. We are now on Apple Podcasts. We are on Spotify. We're on Google Podcast. We're on something called Acast, A-C-A-S-T. We're on something called Pocket Casts. And we're on Breaker. We're still waiting for clearance from Amazon Music, TuneIn, Deezer, and Stitcher. Amazon probably going to flag me now that I told them to chill out on the technology, but that's okay. And Deezer, I'm just sitting here wondering if there's any relation to Deezer D, who I believe was DJ for Vanilla Ice. Just, at least in the movie Cool as Ice he was. Just throwing that out there in case you didn't already know it. So that's it for today. By the way, we're on YouTube as well. So go over there, like, subscribe. I might try to, we got full episodes on there. I think I'm going to try to, these little smaller segments, I'm going to try to make snippets of and put them over there. But anyway, love you all. Be safe, be well, and God bless.